I've been making a lot of videos about Poland, learning a lot about Polish history, culture, and I think one of the most important parts of Polish culture is, of course, the Polish language. I've heard it in so many videos, whether it's comedy, music, and I thought I should learn more about the Polish language itself. This is called the Polish language. Is this real? So, of course, to me, being from the UK as an English speaker, it is a little bit difficult to say some of the words, but for me it's actually a very enjoyable language to say the words. It's a very nice language. I enjoy it. I enjoy listening to it. So yeah, want to learn more? Let's watch this video and we can learn. You can tell me more about what you think about this video being Polish.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Lang Focus channel, and my name is Paul. Today's topic is the Polish language, or
Język polski.
Język polski.
as it's called in Polish. Polish is the official language of the Central European country of Poland, where 97% of the population speaks it as a native language. That makes Poland the most linguistically homogeneous country in Europe. It's the second most widely spoken Slavic language after Russian, with around 45 million native speakers and an additional 5 million second language speakers. As you may know, Slavic languages are a branch of the Indo-European language family. Between the year 500 CE and 1000 CE, Proto-Slavic gradually diverged into dialects, and by 1000 CE there were already distinct West Slavic, East Slavic, and South Slavic languages, and dialects of these three languages developed into the languages of each Slavic branch.
Yeah, tell me, if you're from Poland, like, can you understand any of these other languages, or is it any real strong similarities? Like, for instance, can you understand Czech? I guess the West Slavic is the countries that will be most similar. Can you understand? Is there any shared words or a lot of shared words in these languages?
The West Slavic languages include Polish, Czech, Slovak, Sorbian, a minority language in Eastern Germany, and Kashubian, a minority language in Poland. Poland first became a state in the 10th century, around the time that Slavic was developing into various distinct languages. The unification of various Slavic tribes within one Polish state helped tie their dialects together as a single language. The Christianization of Poland took place in the decades following the creation of the Polish state, and along with that came Latin via the Roman Catholic Church, which became the formal written language and the language of the nobility. Polish continued to be the predominant spoken language among the general population, but Latin certainly had some influence on Polish because of its prestigious position. Polish was not a written language until the adoption of Christianity and the arrival of Latin. From that point on, vernacular Polish began to be written informally using the Latin alphabet. The oldest sample of written Polish that we know of is a list of names dating back to the year 1136. The oldest written Polish sentence that we know of dates back to 1270.
Tell me if you knew that. It's quite it's interesting, like, learning the foundations and the beginnings, the origins of the language. Tell me if you know this sort of information, if you learned about this
The oldest written Polish sentence that we know of dates back to 1270.
1270, the first
There are
time
more substantial
written
texts from the
sentence.
14th century onwards, as Polish became more commonly written. From the beginning, the Latin alphabet was insufficient for writing all the different sounds of Polish. So over time, Polish writers began using a variety of diacritics that have become part of the Polish alphabet and a characteristic part of Polish writing. During the Jagiellonian dynasty, Polish became an official language alongside Latin. Also during this time, cities were founded and administered under a German system of law, known as Magdeburg law. Due to the influence of this system of law, numerous German words entered Polish. German loanwords in Polish include
Ratusz,
meaning town council, and
burmistrz.
meaning mayor. Also, there had always been contact with Germanic speakers, especially in the northwestern areas, all the way back to Proto-Slavic. So there are other Germanic loanwords in Polish that go back a long way. Latin remained an official language alongside Polish through the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, but Polish had gradually become more widely used by the nobility than Latin. In the 16th century, while Polish was becoming more standardized, it served as the vehicle for the golden age of Polish literature. It also became the lingua franca throughout much of Central and Eastern Europe, spoken by the ruling classes not only in Lithuania, but also in Ukraine and Belarus.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like really important at this time, especially so widely spoken. You see, even just geographically, that's a huge region as well.
Which were mostly
by landmass, by size.
part of the Commonwealth at the time. The third official language of the Commonwealth was Ruthenian, which was spoken in the eastern areas and would later develop into Ukrainian and Belarusian dialects. Polish was influenced by Ruthenian to some extent due to contact. Poland was erased from the map between 795 and 1918 after being partitioned between the Russian Empire, Austria, and the Kingdom of Prussia, and later the German Empire, which it was a part of. Polish ceased to be an official language anywhere, and dialectal differences grew in the different occupied parts of Poland.
Well, that's an interesting fact. Polish ceased to be an official language anywhere, and that's for over 125 years almost. That's quite crazy to think of that, and that's only in 1918 that ended.
After the First World War, the borders of Europe were redrawn, and an independent Polish state was restored. Lands which were considered historically Polish were taken back from occupying powers, but not all lands. The borders were once again redrawn after World War II, with the recovered territories being given from Germany to Poland, and the Soviet Union occupying eastern areas and making them part of Belarus and Ukraine. Many Poles were forcibly transferred from those neighboring countries to Poland, transferred being a euphemism for kicked out. This forced transfer of Poles from their homes to different dialect areas resulted in dialect leveling, the loss of dialectal differences. And transfer, in other words expulsion, of non-Poles to neighboring countries made Poland a very linguistically homogeneous country. Today, 4 main dialects of Polish are usually recognized, but the differences are now slight. There's Greater Polish, Lesser Polish, Masovian, and Silesian, though speakers often consider themselves a separate language community.
Oh, that's interesting. So Silesian, tell me if you speak Silesian, do you consider yourself a separate language community? Tell me if there's any, what's the biggest differences between these languages, or these dialects? Is there any stereotypes of people who speak each of these dialects? You know, like in the UK, sometimes, for instance, Scottish people have the stereotype of we have like an aggressive language. Sometimes, like say in London, people can have like a posh dialect. So it's like kind of different stereotypes, although it's obviously not applicable to everybody. Is there any sort of stereotypes for these different dialects?
And sometimes counted as Kashubian, which is generally considered a separate language but is closely related to Polish. So, what is Polish like? Pronunciation and orthography. Polish writing has a number of characteristic features that are quite striking at first glance. The Polish alphabet has 32 letters, but there are also 7 digraphs, pairs of letters which represent individual sounds. Notice that 4 of those digraphs feature the letter Z. This makes Z the most common letter in Polish writing. And notice that there are 2 additional letters that are derived from Z, which appear in another 2 digraphs. If you include those, people seeing Polish in writing for the first time will definitely notice the abundance of Z's and Z-like letters. But those 2 Z-derived letters are not the only special letters in Polish. There are 9 in total. This letter is pronounced W, while in Polish the letter W is normally pronounced V. These letters represent nasal vowels, more specifically, vowels followed by nasal semivowels. The exact quality of the nasal sound varies depending on the surrounding sounds, and the nasal sound is normally absent before W or in the nasal E at the end of a word. For example, this word is normally pronounced
się,
and is only pronounced like this
się,
in very careful formal speech.
Show.
There are some noticeably long consonant clusters in Polish. This one has a cluster of 5 consonants in a row,
bezwzględny,
meaning
Bezwzględny.
ruthless. Then there's this one,
przestępstwo,
Przestępstwo.
meaning crime. It has a cluster of only 4 consonants, but there's also a digraph in this first cluster, which makes it appear to have 3 consonants instead of 2. So to someone looking at Polish for the first time, it probably appears to be full of long consonant clusters, even though some of them are just digraphs. Most simple Polish consonants are pronounced like their English equivalents, but note that C is pronounced as C. And as I mentioned before, W is pronounced V. And also note that the letters X, V, and Q are not used in Polish. The sound
Never
ks,
actually realised.
usually represented by X in English, is spelled KS in Polish. One important feature of Polish pronunciation is hard and soft consonants, a common feature of Slavic languages. Soft consonants are generally palatalized, like a hard consonant pronounced together with a Y sound. Aside from Y and L, which are always soft, soft consonants are indicated by an accent above the letter or by an I following the consonant. For example, S and Sh, N and Ny, P and P. Most of the digraphs we saw before belong to a subset of hard consonants that derive from historically soft consonants. Why do hard and soft consonants matter? Because in Polish, some inflectional suffixes are different depending on whether they are preceded by a hard consonant or a soft consonant. Most consonants, specifically obstruents, stops, affricates, and fricatives, when they appear in consonant clusters, must all be voiced or voiceless. This results in voiced obstruents becoming voiceless when they come before or after a voiceless consonant. For example,
Kwiat. Łódka.
this also happens at the ends of words. This word meaning car,
Samochód.
and this word meaning doctor.
Lekarz.
This type of devoicing is one of the main things that keeps Polish from being a fully phonetic language. In other words, a language in which one grapheme equals one sound. Another thing is that the distinction between a few sounds has been lost, so that now these letters are pronounced the same.
Ż, Ch, U.
Grammar. Let's start with the word order of Polish. The unmarked or neutral word order in Polish is SVO, as in English. For example,
Moje dziecko jest słodkie.
meaning my child is cute, or my child is sweet. The word order here is exactly like in English, subject, verb, complement. This sentence has no object, but the adjective here is a complement.
That's actually quite interesting because I feel like in Europe, a lot of the languages is actually the other way around. Like here in Malaysia, I speak Malay, Malaysian, and it's the same as Europe where usually the sentence is like around the other way compared to English. So interesting to see that we have that similarity between English and Polish in the structure or the word order.
Another example,
Mężczyzna je obiad.
which means the man is eating dinner. Subject, verb, object. Notice that there is no definite article in Polish,
that's what I was
and actually
thinking.
there isn't an indefinite article either. Now, this is the unmarked or neutral word order, but Polish word order is quite flexible, and elements of the sentence can be moved in order to emphasize them. In the first sentence, we could emphasize my child by moving it to the end.
Słodkie jest moje dziecko.
In the second sentence, we could emphasize man by moving it to the end.
Obiad je mężczyzna.
So
that's
this sentence is
interesting.
now dinner eats the man. Technically, any word order is possible, though some sound unnatural and would be most suitable for written poetry or something.
Yeah, so would you understand that if someone actually said it in that second format?
How can these words be moved around freely like this? Doesn't that get confusing? The main reason is that Polish is a highly inflected language, and nouns, among other words, have case endings, endings that tell us the function of the word in the sentence. Because the function of the word is obvious from its ending, then we don't need to use word order or syntax to determine the function of the word.
Dziecko.
Means
Dziecko.
child. This is the
Dziecko.
singular form in the nominative case, which is usually used for the subject of a sentence, or a predicate adjective after a linking verb. There are 6 other cases in Polish: genitive, dative, accusative, instrumental, locative, and vocative. These are the singular forms, but there are also plural forms. It's important to note that Polish has grammatical gender,
Dziecko.
is a neuter noun. In their most basic form, the nominative form, neuter nouns end in e, un, a, or There are also masculine and feminine nouns. Masculine nouns in their nominative form usually end in a consonant. An example is
Chłopak.
meaning boy. Some case endings differ between different types of masculine nouns. Compare
Chłopak.
a masculine person to
Bank.
a masculine object. Notice there's a difference in the accusative plural. The endings are different for masculine people on the one hand and masculine objects and animals on the other. For many nouns, this is also true for the nominative plural. Also notice that the genitive and accusative singular endings are different. In these cases, the endings are different for masculine animate nouns, in other words, humans and animals on the one hand, and inanimate objects on the other, though in the genitive case, a few types of nouns are exceptions. Feminine nouns in their nominative form usually end in a or e. For example,
Matka.
meaning
Matka.
mother. Adjectives also agree with nouns in gender, number, and case, and they have their own sets of endings. For example,
Młoda matka.
means a young
Młoda
mother
matka.
in the nominative case. But here's a phrase in the genitive case,
Dziecko młodej matki.
the young mother's child. Not only the noun has a genitive case ending, but so does the adjective. And notice that the adjective's genitive ending is different from the noun's. Adjectives have endings for all cases, in all genders, for both singular and plural. Verbs. Polish.
Yeah, this is actually quite difficult. I mean, like this is going to take me a bit longer to actually really study this to really fully understand it, but it's actually very interesting. Tell me like what you think as a Polish person. Do you think it is easy for someone who's not Polish to learn Polish? What would be the best way to do it in your opinion?
Verbs have two tenses, past and non-past. But there are also two major aspects, which indicate completion of an action, the perfective aspect, or incompletion of an action, the imperfective aspect. Each verb has separate infinitives for the imperfective and perfective aspect, and then conjugations are built around those infinitives in order to indicate the tense. In other words, the time at which the complete or incomplete action is done. Let's take a look at the verb meaning to read.
Czytać.
This is an imperfective infinitive. In other words, the reading is in progress or ongoing.
Przeczytać.
This is a perfective infinitive, meaning the reading is complete. The perfective form of verbs is derived from the imperfective form by adding a prefix to it, or sometimes by adding a suffix or changing a vowel in the verb stem. Now let's conjugate these in the past tense. You drop the ch from the end of the infinitive and add one of these endings to the remaining stem. For example,
Ja czytałem.
means I was reading. In other words, the reading was ongoing at a certain point in the past.
Ja przeczytałem.
Means I read. In other words, I completed the action of reading within a certain time period in the past. By the way, please note that Polish is a pro-drop language, meaning that the subject pronoun can often be left out. That's because the verb endings often make it clear who the subject is.
Okay.
But something to note is how the verbs are conjugated for gender in the past tense. In the first and second person singular, there are masculine and feminine forms. The third person singular also has a neuter form. For the plural forms, the distinction is between masculine personal endings, in other words for people, and all the others. A masculine inanimate object or animal will be conjugated the same as for feminine or neuter nouns. So while a man would say,
Ja czytałem.
a woman would say,
Ja czytałam.
and if you're talking to a man, you would say,
Ty czytałeś.
but if you're talking to a woman, you would say.
Ty czytałaś.
Speakers of other Slavic languages won't see anything strange about this, but speakers of Germanic and Romance languages might need to get used to this.
Yeah, this one definitely would get some getting used to for me because, like as I said, when I was learning Malaysian, it's actually a very simple language to learn. There's not any sort of masculine and feminine. It's all just one. Even for instance, like certain words have, like a meaning. So for saying him or her is one word. Is like dia. So not only do they have not have masculine and feminine, they just actually can combine. They can just make one word applicable to different meanings.
Now let's take a look at the non-past conjugations. Non-past? What do you mean by non-past? Is it present or future? Well, that depends on whether it's imperfective or perfective. For an imperfective verb like
Czytać.
the non-past conjugation has present tense meaning. For a perfective verb like
Przeczytać.
the non-past conjugation has future tense meaning.
Ona czyta książkę.
This means she's reading a book, while this sentence
Ona przeczyta książkę.
means she will read a book. Unlike the past tense conjugations, the non-past conjugations don't have any gender distinctions. The tricky thing about the non-past conjugation is that there isn't just one of them. There are actually 4 different conjugations, with virtually all verbs following one of them. Conjugation 1 and conjugation 4 are characterized by an E vowel in the third person singular form. Conjugation 2 by an I vowel in the third person singular form, and conjugation 3 by an A vowel in the third person singular. The perfective non-past form is sometimes referred to as the simple future. There's another compound future tense that expresses the imperfective future. In other words, an action that is ongoing or repeating in the future.
Ona będzie czytać książkę.
This sentence means she will be reading a book. It's formed by using the future tense of
Być.
the word meaning to be, followed by the imperfective infinitive.
That's actually good.
Bitch.
That's actually quite
Is an
good.
irregular verb, using a different
Bitch.
verb stem in the past, present, and future forms. Here's an example in the present tense.
Nie jestem Polakiem.
Nie jestem
This means
Polakiem.
I'm not Polish.
Nie
And as a
jestem
quick side note,
Polakiem.
here we see how Polish negation works. You simply place the negation particle nie before the verb. Now that we've examined some of the major features of Polish, let's take a look at a few more sentences and see what we find. This sentence means, my father reads 2 books every day.
Mój ojciec codziennie czyta 2 książki.
Word for word, it's, my father, every day, read 2 books. First off, we see a possessive adjective before the noun meaning father. Possessive adjectives in Polish are inflected for the gender and number of the noun. Here the word,
Ojciec.
meaning father, is masculine and singular. So the possessive is in its masculine singular form. And ojciec is in the nominative case. Next
Codziennie.
is an adverb meaning every day. The word for day is.
Dzień.
Next, we see the third person masculine singular present tense form of the verb. Next, we see the number,
2.
which means 2.
Dwie.
Numbers 1 to
Dwie.
4 in Polish have different forms depending on the case and gender of the noun they are referring to.
2.
Is feminine and is used for nominative and accusative case. Here it's the accusative. The number is feminine because the word for book is feminine.
Książki.
Is the plural form used for nominative and accusative cases, and here it's the accusative. A moment ago I mentioned that numbers 1 to 4 have different numerous forms. Numbers higher than 4 have only 2 forms. When counting masculine personal nouns, they are in the genitive case, and the nouns they refer to are in the genitive case. And when counting all other nouns, they are in the nominative accusative case. But the noun is still in the genitive case. So if we change the number in this sentence, say from 2 to 5, the sentence would look like this. My father reads 5 books every day.
Mój ojciec codziennie czyta 5 książek.
The number 5 has 2 forms,
5.
for masculine people and
5.
for all others, including objects like books.
Książek.
And this noun is in the genitive plural form. And one more sentence. This sentence means everyone likes him because he often laughs.
Wszyscy go lubią, bo często się śmieje.
Word for word, it's everyone, him, they like, because, often, reflexive pronoun, laughs. First we see the pronoun meaning everyone. Pronouns in Polish have different case forms. Since this is the subject of the sentence, it's in the nominative case. Next, we see a personal pronoun meaning him. Personal pronouns also have different case forms. This one is in the accusative case. There are 2 other accusative forms.
Jego. Niego. Go.
Is used when the pronoun is not being emphasized.
Lubią.
Is the third person plural form of the verb,
Lubić.
meaning to like. This verb belongs to conjugation 2 and has an I vowel in the third person singular. Next we see
Bo.
a conjunction meaning because. And after that we see
Często.
an adverb meaning often. Next we see a reflexive verb meaning he laughs. Polish has lots of reflexive verbs, meaning that both the doer and the receiver of the action are the same. That may not always be obvious in terms of meaning, but in terms of grammar, that's how it works. This word
Się.
is a reflexive pronoun which you simply add to the verb to form the reflexive. It has only one form. Finally, something simple in Polish. The verb here is in the third person singular present tense, and this verb belongs to conjugation 1. Let me take this part of the sentence and ask a question about it.
Czy wszyscy go lubią?
Meaning, does everyone like him? The way you ask yes or no questions in Polish is very simple. You simply add the question marker.
Czy?
Let's formulate another question. This means, who do they like?
Kogo lubią?
This is an open-ended question using an interrogative pronoun meaning who. Interrogative pronouns in Polish have different case forms. This one is in the accusative case. In the nominative case, it takes a different form. So if you wanted to ask who likes him, it would be
Kto go lubi? Kto?
is the nominative form. Honorable mention. This is a last-minute addition to the video, but several Polish speakers have asked me to include this particular feature of the language. When talking about the presence of something in Polish, you use the verb
Być.
meaning to be. For example,
On tu jest.
means he is here. That seems straightforward. The unusual part is the negative form.
Nie ma go tu.
Not it has him here.
Not
So this is
has
like
him
saying,
here.
it doesn't have him here. But who is it? I don't know. But I suppose it's like a dummy subject
place.
in English. Like when we say, it's sunny, it doesn't really refer to anything. As you can see, Polish is an extremely interesting language, but it's also one that many learners find daunting and intimidating. But as with any language, there are people who learn it, whether they moved to Poland or they're simply deeply interested in Polish culture. Those people didn't learn everything about the language all at once. They learned certain pieces first, then they learned other pieces afterwards, until eventually they had a fuller picture of the language. So don't let the details of Polish scare you off if you have the interest and the motivation to go for it. The question of the day. To native speakers of Polish, what additional features of Polish would you like to tell us about? For example, are there any features of informal speech that you would like to share? And to students of Polish, what do you find most challenging about the language? Do you have any tips on how to deal with it? If you enjoyed this video,
That was very interesting, so that's pretty cool. I actually might make another few videos just like having a look at some simple Polish sentences or Polish words, trying to get my pronunciation, trying to learn some words and small sentences. As I said, I learned Malaysian. I hadn't learned a language since I was at school, but I learned it when I moved here after a couple years. And it was really enjoyable, just the whole process of learning the language and really activating something in my brain that was nice to like study. And yeah, it's quite challenging at certain parts, but actually on the whole it was relatively easy. Polish obviously is a lot different, it's a lot more difficult, it's a lot more complex, and not just in the pronunciation of the words, also in the rules, the grammar and that sort of thing. Not the grammar, but the rules, the fact that it has masculine and feminine forms in the word and stuff like that as well. But it's interesting. I might do it for fun now and again, make a video about it, and you can recommend other Polish language learning videos that are enjoyable to watch. Tell me what you think about that as well. Yeah, tell me some interesting Polish words or sentences, phrases that you think would be good for me to say. I might make a video about that, trying to say some of them. So thanks for watching.